All right, Horsemen Academy. Man, it's almost the end of July. I can't believe that. But we still going to get one out in July. Horsemen Academy for July. I got a special guest. Actually, this brother has been in this podcast studio a few times. I visited him at another podcast studio where we did an interview. So this is the exchange, y'all. And this is how this industry is supposed to work. You got LP here, and we have Michael, the architect. Please introduce yourself to the audience, brother.
Yeah, well, Michael, the architect. That's where you can find me on Instagram, YouTube. My actual name, Michael Carpenter. I'm a marketing consultant, podcaster, and man, I'm just happy to be here. I love the culture of podcasting. Is that you trade shows. Like, I think this is so cool, and so I'm excited to like add value to your audience. You came and added value to my peeps, and that episode will be dropping soon. But excited to be on the show, man.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy is that just the average everyday person has a story to tell,
right?
And they can tell that story in a way that someone can find value in it. So exchanging and going to other people's studios and collecting different ideas is always a part of the industry. So tell us what got you, let's start before podcasting.
Okay.
What got you into marketing? Was this something you studied in college? Were you doing this in high school?
Like, I wish I would have started in college, man. Like, I started it because I had an entrepreneurial venture. So in 2019, I started a company called Illuminate Entertainment. And basically, we were throwing parties and concerts for college kids. We were also kind of just creating a community for like local artists, right? And so I found a whole bunch of kids. I was a college pastor in a town called Belton where I went to college.
Where's Belton at?
Belton's like in between Austin and Waco.
Because I've heard of it before, but I didn't know exactly where it was.
Central Texas area, kind of like Waco, Temple, Killeen, all kind of in that area. And so I was over there just trying to give back and, you know, serve these college kids I was working with. And I was like, I got to find ways to make these kids like want to come hang out, right? Want to come, you know, visit the church I was at. And so I came up with this idea to do this showcase, right? And there was all these like local artists, like these rappers and kids that are like wanting to do music, but they just didn't really have a platform to get out there. So like, hey, I'm gonna build a platform. So I'm gonna host these shows, bring these kids out. So like while I was marketing that, I had to sell tickets. I had to really, you know, grow the brand. So I started doing marketing and I was like, oh, I actually kind of really like this, right? And so from there, it was just like, I kind of just became self-taught. So HubSpot Academy, YouTube, got courses.
You got to do it all at that point.
So I just pretty much learned. And then at the time I was working at an economic development firm in Waco, right? And so we had a transition in leadership. And so my role just kind of just was sitting there and they were like, we don't really know what to do with you. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to do marketing. And they're like, all right, cool. So I basically rewrote my job description, started doing marketing with them. We were doing SMS text. I became a food blogger, doing reels, short form, YouTube, video. I mean, I was doing everything, right? Just trying to basically practice everything I was learning with my business. And then so I was just doing it for them. And so it just kind of just snowballed from there. So, yeah.
So interesting. So from youth pastor, do you still serve in the ministry in any way or are you just?
Yeah. So my ministry now is I want to grow the kingdom of God through business. Right. So everything I do right now is still ministry for me. It's not in the traditional sense of like, I don't work for a church or I'm not trying to like, you know, grow like a spiritual ministry per se. But I believe that like I can use the gifts and talents God's given me to help grow businesses. And I want to grow businesses that are making impacts in the world. And, you know, if I can help somebody grow their business, that means they're going to tithe more. I mean, they have more resources to get back into the community. So there's a lot of different ways. And then obviously with my podcast, the podcast is for Christian entrepreneurs to help them grow their faith, community, and their business. And so the conversations we have are practical to actually help you grow your business, grow your community. But then we also talk about like either the person on my shows, their personal story. We talk about faith in general. So I just try to find ways to intersect and make my life ministry instead of being like, hey, I'm a minister. I'm like, no, this is just what I do.
No. And those conversations end up showing people that you're a millennial, I'm assuming. So even like, because what people will say now is that the younger generation is going away from organized religion. You know, they're going away from being a follower. And in my life, I don't see that. I meet a lot of people like you, you know, or, you know, people who come into the studio. We have a lot of shows that are faith-driven shows that they are here to not only share the gospel, but also show it in their life. So what made you make that decision as a part of your show? Because it's an anchoring thing. You got to decide that.
Well, I think it was like one of those things where like, I was just kind of trimming the fat, to be honest. Like I had a lot of different things I could do. And I was like, I'm trying to like get to what's really important to my life. Like what are the things that I do naturally that are just me?
Okay.
Community building is one. Marketing is one. As my faith is one. And so, I'd also do marketing consulting for small businesses. And so part of that too was like just creating messaging, right?
Yeah.
And I started noticing when I incorporated my faith into my messaging, like people were gravitating toward it, right? Yeah. People were trusting me more. And then I found this guy named Myron Golden.
Yeah. That's the guy. With the fake leg.
I saw Myron is at the top of the game. I mean, he's doing the thing and he's so vocal about his faith. And I was like, yo, you can actually do this at a really high level and it doesn't look cheesy and it doesn't look like you're trying to just use God to sell. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I've seen a lot of people who just say they're a Christian and they almost use God as a way to get in the door. You know what I mean? And I was like, I don't really want to do that. I want to be bold about my faith, but I also want it to be like organic, authentic, but like really well done. So I saw Myron doing it and I was like, I can do this.
What's crazy is Myron, he does a lot of his keynotes. Mm-hmm. He'll connect the story from the Bible to business.
Yep.
Like he'll talk about, something that may have happened in the New Testament and connect it to how, this is how you make money today. And I would have never thought to even look at the Bible that way. Yeah. But, the way he was brought up and teaching, I think it probably connected entrepreneurship to religion. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't do that. That's it. So for you, you've been going down this path. How successful has this been for you?
Yeah, I think it's been good. I think there's always room for growth, right? I'm always trying to grow, especially financially, always trying to look for ways I can like level up, right? And I think how I've defined success is like doing the thing that God has called me to do in the season that he's called me to do it, right? There's an NF song that kind of basically says something similar to that. Yeah. And he's like, yo, success is doing what's on your heart. And so that to me is successful, right? In terms of like, yo, financially, I got some room to grow and really knock some things out. But then also I'm like, yo, like I'm being able to make an impact in people's lives, right? And so people coming onto my shows who've never done a podcast before, never had a platform to really share what they know, you know what I mean? Or share what's on their heart. And they're just leaving and being like, yo, thank you so much. That was so good. People watching my show and being like, hey, I really appreciate, you know what I mean? So like seeing like the momentum that we're building from the podcast specifically, I think is a success so far. And I definitely like my wife told me the other day, like, yo, she's retiring in 3 years, right? So my goal is like in 3 years, my podcast and my YouTube channel is going to be like, yo, a money maker. I'm gonna be able to retire my wife. So that's the goal, right? And so that's what I'm shooting for. And so like that's success that's another level of success for me. So that's what I say, like financially, I'm not there yet. I'm not able to retire wifey from the podcast yet, but that's where we're going. So
it ends up being, the women in our lives will add a lot of not pressure, but expectation of you. Yeah. Okay. You've been doing this for fun, right? There's something behind this. Oh yeah. So I definitely get that. Okay, let's pivot a little bit.
Okay.
Marketing consultant. Mm-hmm. For what and who? What does that look like?
Yeah, so small businesses, but a lot of it's been real estate. Like when I first came to Houston, I was working for Compass, their Fortune 500 luxury real estate brokerage. So I was working on their marketing team. And so from that, like basically my network, I just end up meeting a bunch of real estate people. And some of my first clients were real estate. And so a lot of the people I'm working with are either real estate adjacent or kind of in that home services. Then I have, just like other people that are just, different types of businesses. And really what I'm helping them do is develop their social media and digital strategy in terms of how to grow their brand awareness, how to create conversion marketing with the content. Like how do I create content that actually gets me sales, building those things out, helping them build out their processes. And so sometimes it gets into business 101, right? Where it's like, hey, the intersection between marketing and sales kind of blends a little bit. And so we're talking about, hey, how do we create project management, processes in your business to help you get from point A to point B? And then also just being a sounding board. Sometimes business owners just need somebody to talk to that kind of really understand where they're at and need that accountability, especially for small businesses. And so I'm really just kind of really there to help with that, do some coaching, mentorship, really wearing a lot of different hats on that, but that's kind of really what I've been doing, and that's been extremely fulfilling, and I really enjoy that. And some people are burnt out from the coaching terminology and like all that kind of stuff. So I like to brand myself as a consultant and less of a coach because I like to do the one-on-one hands-on. Like I'm not gonna just throw somebody into a Zoom call with 50 people and I'm just like, you know what I mean?
You're one man shop.
Yeah.
So for you, do you have employees yet, or is that something you're building towards?
Yeah. So I have a VA that works on some editing stuff for us, and then I have like contractors that I use.
Gotcha.
So my boy Irvin does my websites. He's out in Maryland. My man is cold. Okay. So if you need a website, Irvin will take care of you. So we use that, and then a bunch of videographers in town that I use for content and stuff. And so sometimes I even do my own content. So when I first started out, I was shooting the content and sending it to editors, and then finally I was like, man, this is a lot of work.
And that's a long timeline in that. Like, there's extra, once there's more hands in the process, it gets more difficult to get back what you want also. Like, the more that you're sending it. Because I'd imagine that you have a vision, not only for yourself, but also when you work with a client, y'all probably come up with a shared vision. Right. Like, okay, this is the direction we want to go in.
Yeah.
Give us two sides. What's a positive experience, maybe a horror story that you've had with that?
Horror story from, like, I guess video editing,
or trying to get someone to go in a direction and it's just not going. Because that's the thing that people don't get sometimes when you're working with people. They have their own ideas. Yeah, you have your own ideas. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know if I have any horror stories. I definitely know times where like it was just like edit after edit after edit, right? We just could not get on the same page, and we were like, "Yo, what is going on?" And so that, to me, I just learned like you just got to get really good at your creative briefs on the front end, like just make sure everybody knows before we go into this project. Here's what we want, so we don't have to go back and forth on the edits. So yeah, I would say that. I mean, like. And I've been pretty good at that, to be honest.
Okay.
So like, I don't really have a lot of just like really bad stories per se, other than just minor edits. And positives was one of my clients went viral.
Nice.
And so he was working with it was Andre Barra with Yes to Real Estate.
Yeah.
And he did a content collaborations with MG the Mortgage Guy.
Nice.
And so there was a video that it was so cool. Like I edited the video and just sent it over to their team. And it was just like we edit videos all the time, so I didn't even think about that particular video, and it popped off and got over 100,000 views and just went crazy, and like
that's great.
NFL people are DMing. It was just really cool to see like a piece of content that I had edited get that kind of recognition. And it was cool, like nobody even knows that I edit, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't really,
but it's,
and like I know that was a really cool thing for me to know, like, hey, I was behind a viral moment, and so you don't get those as much anymore these days.
Andre is solid too. He'll yell at you from the stage. I've been at several events where Andre is, so I know his style is dynamic, and it's dynamic for not only social media, but also podcasting.
Yeah.
I know he shoots some podcast content as well. So you working with people, what's like one of the first things you would tell someone if you're going to engage a firm like yours or the way you work? What's one of the first things you would have them prepare to get to work with you?
I take a journalistic approach.
Okay.
Right. And so I think that's one thing. There's so many things I wish I would have studied in college. One, I wish I would study film, graphic design, marketing, and journalism. Like those are four that I wish I would have done.
Because you're doing them all now.
Yeah, I'm doing them all now. I studied social work, man. Like I was playing college football, and I was like, I didn't like the business degree, and so I was like, okay, what's the next degree? And so I took a career aptitude test, and they're like social work. I was like, cool, that's easy.
Yeah.
Took it, and it actually was a really easy degree for me. But I say all that to say is I spend a lot of time asking questions, right? Really understanding what is it the person actually wants, right? What are they looking for? What does success look like? What are their actual problems? I don't just make an assumption of like, oh, here's what your problem is. Here's my solution. I really want to get down to the meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is a lot of people will say they want to get good at marketing, want to improve in their marketing. Really what everyone's saying is they just want to make more money, right? And so we actually started doing courses and helping people launch coaching programs for that exact reason. Because I was like, cool, well, you want to get better at marketing, and you want to get more sales and make more money. Well, let's just go straight to where the money is.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that you have that we can sell? Like, what knowledge and experience that you have, what expertise that you have that we can package up and sell it, right? And so that was like a bonus offer that I just created because I started asking questions and really understanding what people wanted. Yeah. And like what they were trying to do. A lot of people really want to make an impact. Right.
Okay.
Like a lot of people want to make an impact in the world. They want to make money, but also want to make an impact. So like, hey, how do we create that type of marketing or sales and courses or the ways that you can actually help people along with making money? And so those are just things that you get when you actually listen to people. Right.
That's the thing. And I can tell you're an active listener, just, even in the interview that we've done before, conversations that we've had, most people don't listen.
Yeah.
They're just waiting to respond.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, okay, well, you said all of this, but let me tell you what I feel like. And I can tell when you mentioned even journalistic approach, like to be a journalist, it requires a heavy amount of listening.
Yeah.
To put something together based on just bits and pieces that you receive from someone, that's a finished product means a lot. So using that approach, you didn't study that. how did you hone that skill?
Okay, so it's interesting because, bro, I've been an athlete my whole life, bro. Okay. So, like, I've been...
Similar, so yeah.
Yeah. What'd you play?
So I football as well. So I know team sports, you have to fall in line. There's communication.
And you're OU alum,
I'm an old guy.
Dang,
so I'm an old man. So, but yes, I know the feeling of there's camaraderie in the team. Yeah. There's leadership. There's... you have a role. Mm-hmm. Your role needs to communicate to other roles. So yeah, it sounds like maybe you were able to take those lessons and bring them to your business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So just kind of like learning, I learned it from my dad was a pastor. So like kind of learning some things from him, getting interviewed by journalists. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? I was constantly being interviewed by journalists. I was on the news. I won state in track in high school.
What event?
In the 400, bro.
Okay. So you're a middle distance.
I really hated it. I was just really good at it.
The 400 to me is the worst.
Oh, it sucked, bro. I hated it.
Sprinting 400.
It was horrible.
What high school you go to again?
It was called Bosqueville. So small 1A school.
That still doesn't matter. Winning state in Texas, period.
Yeah. So it was a cool experience. Just trained my butt off and was able to make it to state. Yeah. And made it to state actually 3 years. All 3 years that I was on varsity in 100, 200, and 400. But yeah, anyways, and then playing football, I got to be around it. So I understand it. Here's the thing what I learned from them. Yeah. Is they ask questions, but they know what they want you to say.
Of course, they've already mapped it out.
Leading questions. So I learned that as well. Well, okay, how do I ask this person questions and figure out what they need help with or what their problem is, knowing what I am and not going to do on the back end.
Agreed.
Like I know where my scope ends, and I'm like, yeah, you can find out what somebody wants, and that may not be the thing, right? Yeah. So how do I position myself as someone who can like ask good questions, but also understand like, hey, this is where I need this person to go, and I want them to discover it, right? I don't want to just be like, I don't want to just tell them, hey, this is what you need to do on social media. I want them to start answering the questions and get to the own conclusion, because then they're going to have more buy-in if I just told them what they should do and they pay me money. Yeah. Then all the pressure's on me, right? Yeah. And the reality is, small businesses, you still got to do the work.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, it doesn't. You with a small business, just because you're hiring someone doesn't mean that you're passive now. Yeah. It's still an active environment for you as the business owner to make this work. So it is a two-way exchange. Okay. Yep. So what's maybe a success story that you've got? You talked about Andre going viral, but maybe something in the trenches where, hey, I took someone that they didn't even know what their business was, and we were able to approach them in a way, brand them in a way where now they're able to do X. Like, have you had any of those yet, or are you still kind of building towards that?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. There's a lot of things that I've done in people's businesses that are a lot of behind the scenes that a lot of people don't see, right? Some of the processes and project management things. But some of my favorite people that I've been working with recently has been Kevin Barnett with Cool Dad. Got behind them and have been working out some processes on the back end for them, really building out some strategy. So some of that stuff you guys will see in the coming months. So y'all start to see, okay, you're going to be like, I see what happened. Like there's going to be a shift in terms of the content and just kind of where it leads people to, and how all that stuff works. So that's in progress, but have really been enjoy working with that brand. And Kevin does a really good job of just like connecting with people, right? Gotcha. So there's a lot of really cool brands. We got to connect with Nike and Microsoft and Moet Hennessy. And there's a lot of really cool brands. So it's been really cool, like even connecting with some of those teams in the back end, right? So that's been really fun. Also, just really love working with Braden Group. I know they're a group that comes over here.
They're great. Yeah.
And so just working with Nicole and Tramisha for a little bit was a lot of fun. Just really kind of working on their personal brands and helping give them some direction in terms of where they're going to go. And they have this awesome, TV show with launching. And so I'm just cool. It's going to be cool to see like what they do with some of the knowledge that they have on the back end of that. So that's been really cool. Just kind of working with those guys. And I mean, I could just go on and on. I mean, there's a couple other clients, Kimberly Lane, Kimberly Dixon. It's been really fun working with her and her team. Again, just building out campaigns and projects to sell real estate.
Of course.
Right? And some of that stuff's not sexy, right? Sometimes the marketing and sales is not.
But it can be though. You know, like when people see the final product, they don't understand the work that went to get there. Absolutely. Like, so it is an interesting process. Okay, so let's shift gears. So you're a podcaster also.
Yeah.
And when you and I talked, one thing you mentioned was like, man, being on a podcast has helped my business.
Oh, yeah.
It has accelerated just people seeing me as a thought leader, trusted partner in marketing, coaching, building space. Give us an example of how that's supported you being a podcaster.
Bro, being a podcaster is a way to add value.
Okay.
I'm always looking at how do I add value, especially in the nurture process when you're really getting to know people. Like so many times we create content and we're just like selling to people. We're just like promoting it people all the time. You know what I mean? Or you're creating value add content that is like, you know, tips and tricks. And honestly, tips and tricks aren't a good sales conversion. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people will just take your tips and tricks all day and use them. Like, thank you. Yep. But they ain't not going to give you no money. Hey, you inspired me. Thank you. But hey, never going to give you any money. You know what I mean? And exactly so I realized, I was like, man, I'm putting all this good content out here and nobody's like, you know what I mean? It's not converting, right? So I was like, well, how do I change the approach, right? So like, how do I be more valuable? How do I add something tangible? Okay. And so I really tapped into human psychology. Like, people want to be able to talk about themselves. People want to be able to promote what they have going on. People want a platform. And also, I just think it's you know, a way to create content. Like for me, like I was running out of time. Like, listen, I don't have enough time to sit down and do batch content all the time, right? So if I can sit down and do a podcast and then do a repurposing strategy and get 20 reels out of it, plus the long form that can go on YouTube, podcasting, like all the different, you know what I mean? The Apple, Spotify, all those things. I was like, okay, I can kill a lot of birds with one stone. You could turn your podcast into a course. I mean, there's just like Patreon. I mean, bro, we can go all day, man. Like so many different ways you can leverage it. And so that's kind of what that's the reason I started doing that. Right. And so, I've been able to build relationships with people and get in rooms that I wouldn't have necessarily been in. Right. Because it's also the theory of reciprocity. Right. Like, you serve somebody on a podcast and they want to be like, hey, I want you to put my friend on the podcast. Exactly. Hey, you should talk to this person. You know what I mean? All these introductions start happening and it's like, oh, cool. Well, I'm just going like, you know what I mean?
And go with the flow. The introduction to you could be a warm introduction to your business. So the podcast ends up being, I mean, free is probably the wrong term, but advertising. You know, you're advertising automatically to a group of people that becomes a warm audience.
Yeah, exactly.
And so in that, what's one of the things that you do in your podcast that maybe you're not selling, but letting people know that you offer a service? What's one of the things you do?
I mean, to be honest, I really haven't promoted my business as much as I could, because here's the reason why. I want to build an audience that gets value from me, just off of the conversations and the people that I have on. So right now, the goal is to build a really solid audience that rocks with me, right? And then we'll start to kind of introduce more of like, hey, if you want to launch your own podcast, we can do that. Or if you need help with marketing, I can do that, right? So I want to start easing some of those things in. So we'll start doing that toward the end of this year, making some of that happen more organically. But I really want to focus on just like, I want to have a really, really good podcast that people want to listen to regardless, right? So once I start introducing some more advertisers and ads, people are like, they're still with me no matter what, right? So that's one. The second thing is just like, people get it, right? Like, I've had people who watch the podcast, they understand what I'm doing. So for the people who really have the eyes to see and understand the digital landscape, they understand the value of what's happening on my podcast. So people are reaching out because they get it. Right. So those are people who are probably a little further on in the process, that's who I want to work with anyway. Right. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, it's kind of a dog whistle to a degree, right? Like, in terms of like, hey, for the people who are supposed to hear it, they kind of see like, oh, okay, see what Michael's doing.
They see it. Yeah. They already know.
And so then they're reaching out and they're like, hey, I want to do what you're doing. Like, how are you doing that? Like, can you help us? Right. You know what I mean? And so those are kind of conversations that are happening as a result of the podcast. Well, it's been so fun. My parents are so proud of the podcast and they're like my biggest fans and I love it. My mom's always in the comment section. My dad sends it to his friends and it's been cool. My dad has a lot of connections and where they're at, and so it's been cool. I've even gotten some clients just from my parents sending their friends the videos, and their friends are like, "Yo, let me talk to your son." Like, I didn't know y'all did. You know what I mean? So this has been really cool, like organic things, and that's why I like it right now. And then obviously in the future, I really want to scale it and make it enterprise level where hey, this is like social proof, David Sands. Like, I really want to get to that level, but I also recognize there's going to be a process to get there. And so and I think it's going to be really cool. There's been a couple of people that like. My guests get to make ads better than or advertise better than I do because I'm setting them up, right? I'm talking about their business, similar to you. I mean, you're in this podcast, you asking me, like I'm asking them questions and letting their best come to the forefront, and I call it gold digging. Like, I'm looking for the gold in their story. So, I want to start hearing, testimonies of like my people coming onto my podcast and them getting sales or them getting a certain result because they came onto my episode. And so that's that's the goal.
Nice. So let's talk about some value, because Horsemen Academy, I always like to make sure that people other than also hearing your story, because people will be interested in that, knowing where you came from, how you got to where you are, we like to give them some value. So what's some trends that you've seen here in marketing? Social media seems like it changes every week.
Literally.
I mean, social media, there's always something. What's some trends that you've seen that maybe you've helped clients go through?
Yeah, so I think the two biggest trends I think that I've been pushing people toward is number one, more authentic content. So the polished style of content where it's like super edited and all that kind of stuff is, first of all, it's really expensive. And so if you don't already have budgets for that stuff, it's just like, like there's some big ticket items there. And then also I think people just genuinely want to see more authentic conversations. They just want to know that you're a real person. Right. And they want to know so I think really pushing people toward that. And so from a business perspective, some people are like, well, I don't want to just show my kids or where I eat. Right. We're not talking about that, but I'm like, hey, how can you be a thought leader? How can you share the knowledge that you have with people that maybe don't have the same kind of knowledge that you have, right? Maybe you have connections at City Hall or you read editorial emails and you know that there are things happening that the common person doesn't know about, right? And so those are kind of things I encourage my clients and just people just like, hey, share the stuff that you know, right? And share it authentically in a way that, people genuinely just want to do. And then also like, don't forget about some of the old school marketing things. Like events are still so like popping. Like when you can get people in a room, you speed up that relationship building process. And so thinking about, well, how can we create activations that get people in a room, build that relationship, and then take it back to digital, right? And that's kind of like the chicken or the egg, right? Like which one came first? Like, hey, is it the digital to the in-person or in-person to the digital? Like which one? And it doesn't really matter, right? You just get into the process, start building that flywheel. And so that's something that I've just really been encouraging people to do, is really think about how you can create that. And then leverage the data from it. Like get the emails, get the phone numbers.
Most people don't even consider, and those are two great ones, because to your point, the events piece is really important because you can sell from the stage. Like if you've got an offer or a service, like once you've got people in a room,
captive.
They're captive. They're not going anywhere. Unless you and most of the time, if you got them in a room, they already know the deal. So they're eager to support and be a part of whatever. And you also just talking around the chicken and the egg piece is interesting as well, because I don't know what comes first. Is it that they come in through the digital door, or is it that, hey, I'm already interested in them anyway, so I was going to show up live regardless. Like I was going to do that regardless. We were going to have an event. We're going to have a party. And that brings me back to maybe even thinking when you were holding those events as a youth pastor. How prevalent was social media during those times?
Oh, it was massive. I mean, it was super massive.
That was your conduit?
Yeah, that's how we got them in, right? We had to get them through social media. I mean, we're talking about like college age kids, right? So like, if you're not popping on social, like, they're like, what is this thing? Like, what is like, why are we gonna, if it doesn't look cool, if they don't look like, they don't see their friends in there, like, so what I loved doing then, we were using SMS, like text messaging, bro. And that's a gold mine that I think more small businesses, especially like real estate folks, people need to really think about.
And it's cheap.
Yeah, it's cheap. And you can it forces you to get really, really to the point. Like, what are you trying to say? You can't send them a long email and a text message. It's got to be to the point, but you can send links, images. So we were using a lot of SMS text messaging to just stay in front of kids, because also that's around the time of the algorithm started to change, right? So it wasn't really like the chronological, like, hey, depending on what time of day you post. It was like started to get into like interest-based content, right? So then it's kind of like, okay, are you showing up on their feed or not? What kind of, you're creating an event content, but they like memes. So like, if you're not creating the right kind of content, they're never going to see it. So we're like, okay, well, how do we leverage email and text message to get in front of these kids? And that was a game changer for sure.
Okay, so marketing we hit on. What are some things that you see, considering you consult on podcasting well? What do you see in podcasting? What are some trends that you've seen there?
Turning your podcast into a VSL.
Okay,
so that's a very specific. That's going to be 1 or 2 of your episodes need to be straight sales. Like
that you think that's period, nothing else.
Period. Like it's a sales. Like you need to incorporate a value into it. But you think about a VSL as a virtual sales landing page, basically is what it is. And typically when people have that, they have like a video on it that tells them like, when
they get to the website, it's right there.
Website. So what you do is you create that, put it into your YouTube channel or your podcast, and then just like have it there and then link to it. So let's say somebody watches an episode, they're like, I want to know more information. You can have in your show notes, like, you're basically your VSL there, right?
Yeah.
But it's also organically on your YouTube, right? Or organically on your podcast. So somebody could actually just stumble upon like your sales page, right? So they could go straight to like converting right there, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I started to see that is a trend. The coaching world, so I get a lot of my stuff from the coaching world, and I know a lot of people like, you know, we got all these fake gurus out here, but the coaching world is super competitive. And so the cream rises to the top over there, right?
Okay.
So in terms of whoever has the best marketing and best sales. So I take a lot of inspiration from what they're doing in terms of marketing, because sometimes it's kind of cutthroat and you get some guys that are very like, you know what I mean? But some of the other things, some of the tactics they do really work. And so I like taking those and then bringing them to more traditional businesses. Also get a lot of inspiration from sports marketing.
Yeah, because sports marketing is interesting. That the sports and political marketing is kind of the same to me.
Yeah.
You pit people against each other.
Yeah.
You make it scarce and make them feel like, oh, if my team loses, everything is wrong, or this player's holding out. Same thing could happen on the policy side. So that's interesting. So in that, you're looking at different industries to be a differentiator in your industry.
Yeah, I have to be because they're, I'm kind of coming to the back door. Like I don't necessarily have the traditional experience that you might look for from someone who does what I do. I don't have the marketing degree. I wasn't like the CMO of a market. You know what I mean? Typically the people who are kind of doing what I do, they've kind of had that C-suite level experience. I have the knowledge, right? But I don't necessarily have it on paper where somebody could be like, okay, you know what I mean? So I got to figure out a way to differentiate myself. And so those are ways that I've been able to do that, is being really innovative, really creative, and coming to people with solutions that are like different than what they might get from someone else who does what I do, right? And so that's why I really appreciate the way I do marketing, because it's not, it's more of a personal touch in terms of just like how my process goes. But I really get to know people, build relationship with people, and they really get to understand like, oh wow, like he thinks about things that are way different. Right?
And those business and that style of business isn't going anywhere. Yeah. Like everybody thought at one point you were never gonna get in touch with people again. Yeah. COVID, we thought we would always be web team. I remember to me, it's tough to watch a podcast now that's only Zoom. Yeah. Like I want to see the people in person. Like we thought that was gonna be the next way things went, but people like human interaction, the human touch. So what do we see next 5 years for you?
That's a good question. I definitely think you're gonna see me grow on the podcast is gonna grow. Okay. You're gonna see us start producing more other shows. I'm gonna be really selective on like helping other people who I think have a great message and helping them get their message out there. So you're going to start seeing more shows come out of Architect Network, which is the name of my podcast network. So you're going to see more shows come out of that. You're going to start seeing more established business model in that. So again, like Social Proof is a big like inspiration of mine. So more things kind of similar to that. You can see kind of the authentic type content with kind of a business model and coaching, some of those things attached to it. And then you'll also see me, this might be something the public probably won't see, but for people who know like yourself, you'll know I'm going to be investing in other businesses. Yeah. And so one thing I'm really big on is helping other people be the best that they can be. Like whatever thing that God put you on this earth to do, I want to come behind that. And so I want to be able to come behind that financially for people, right? And so be able to invest financially into businesses or invest, sweat equity, you know what I mean? Being able to give consulting to someone who maybe can't afford it and help them grow their business because I believe in what they're doing. And so that'll be a big thing, man. And just generosity, bro. Like I genuinely want to be able to give away cars and just really serve people. I think like people is the metric for my life. I'm looking for how I can serve and make the world a better place. And so obviously I'm doing the business right now because I realize the heart and all the things I want to do need capital, right? So I'm like, all right, cool. I got to go grind on the business side so I can get this capital, right? And build these relationships. But then I want to come back and then serve the people, right? And then also not just serve people who are quote unquote disenfranchised or underprivileged, but like I want to serve people who are like wealthy, right? And I want to serve big business too. I want to be able to like potentially impact macro level conversations. We talked about politics. Like I want to be able to like potentially work on a campaign for a candidate that I really believe in and be able to get policies across the aisle that maybe wouldn't have got there without the marketing strategies and the things that we had. So those are kind of like some really high level things that I'm really big on. I don't know how many of them are going to check out in the next 5 years, but that's kind of like, that's where I'm going. So yeah.
Like to me, it sounds like, one word I'd probably say before we pivot to one more question is I hear service.
Yeah.
Like you are a person who is willing to serve.
Yeah.
And in that service, hey, I want the monetary gains.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my passion for people is serving.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I hear.
Yep.
Lastly, so this is a question I ask everybody who comes on. If you were, hey, you had all your, needs met, everything done, and you had 10,000 liquid that you can do anything with as an entrepreneur. What would you do with that 10,000 as an entrepreneur to have the most impact on your business?
That is a really good question. So it would be like on my particular business.
It could be someone that you're talking to, but let's use your business as an example. Let's say, hey, all your needs are met.
Okay.
And every lease, rent, whatever, everything is paid. I've got 10,000 liquid that has said, hey, if you don't spend this to support or benefit your business, we're taking it back. What would you do?
I think that I would probably. Dang, there's so many things I do. I gotta think about I would need more than 10K to be honest. Bro, what's coming to my mind, bro? I need 100K for what I'm thinking about.
10 is the number.
I got 10K. I'm like, dang, we on a budget.
And it's free and clear.
Okay.
No obligation.
Yeah, bro. I think that I would probably buy some property.
Okay.
I would probably get a down payment on a studio condo or something and kind of create maybe a office feel. Because a lot of what I do is virtual. I really don't need an office space. Okay. I'm not really. You guys have a podcast studio. I'm not necessarily that's not in the cards right now to have my own studio. Yeah. But I think I would probably get something just if I don't, you know what I mean? I probably would do something like that and probably create some kind of a in-person environment where we can really kind of do some of those activations and stuff. Okay. I could just do it under my own business. So yeah.
So no, that's good. So I'm glad he went to 100,000, y'all. That's the first time I ever had someone say.
I mean, guess something because I dream big, right?
No doubt.
So I'm like, bro, 10K is not a lot of money. You know what I mean? And I know for the things that God wants me to do, I already told you, we're talking macro level. So I'm like, bro, ask me that question for $1 million and now we're cooking, right? What are you gonna do with $1 million? What are you gonna do with 100K? Or are we gonna do with 200K? Now we're able to do something bigger than just my business, right? So that's kind of how I think.
Nah, that's great. So tell the people again where they can find you, how they can get in touch. And I know there'll be people interested in your service. Let them know absolutely. How to get started with you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm assuming you also have my contact information in the show notes. So Michael the Architect on Instagram, on YouTube, you can find us at Architect Network. Architect is spelled a little bit different. Yeah. It's ARKITECT. And I did that because we're creating the blueprint for how to grow your business. And so architects create blueprints. And so I was trying to get the domain and bro, I couldn't get my notes. So I had to get creative with the spelling so I could get a domain. So people be messing up my name all the time. So I gotta definitely throw out that disclaimer. And then you can email me at michael@architectmarketing.com. And yeah, man, looking forward to connecting more with your audience. I know you guys got some good stuff coming out.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I want to definitely support what you guys are doing. And yeah, you can probably find me at one of the next events you guys got coming up.
So y'all tap in with him on Instagram. You'll see me on a soon episode of his. I think it'll probably release probably a few weeks after this one.
Yeah.
But y'all tap in. This is Horsemen Academy for July, and we're out.